Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching the stars drift past the viewport. It was his favorite time of day, when the ship ran on night cycle and most of the crew was asleep. The silence gave him time to think about home, about Earth, about the life he had left behind to patrol the outer edges of human space. The Defiance was not a big ship. She was built for speed and reconnaissance, not for fighting wars. Jake had served on her for 3 years now, and he knew every sound she made, every vibration in her hull. His crew was small but skilled. They had worked together so long that they could almost read each other's minds. "Captain, we're getting some strange readings on the long-range sensors," said Lisa Brooks from her position at the navigation console. She was young but sharp, one of the best navigators in the fleet. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. Jake walked over to look at her screen. The display showed empty space ahead of them, just like it had for the past 2 weeks. They were patrolling the border near the Kepler Expanse, a region of space that no one had fully explored yet. It was supposed to be empty. "What kind of readings?" Jake asked. "I'm not sure. The computer can't identify them. They're big, whatever they are, and they're moving fast." Lisa's voice carried a note of worry that Jake had never heard before. Tony Blake looked up from his engineering station. He was older than the rest of them, with gray hair and hands that were always stained with grease. "Could be a solar storm, or some kind of space weather," he suggested. "The instruments get confused sometimes out here." Sam Carter, their weapons officer, shook her head. "No, I'm seeing the same thing on tactical. Multiple contacts, moving in formation. That's not natural." Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. In all his years of service, they had never encountered anything like this. Pirates usually traveled alone or in small groups. These readings showed dozens of objects, all moving together with military precision. "Amy, try to raise fleet command," Jake ordered. Amy Walsh was their communications officer, a quiet woman who could make their radio work even in the worst conditions. Amy's fingers danced over her controls, but after a few minutes she shook her head. "I'm getting interference, Captain. Heavy interference. I can barely get through to the nearest relay station." The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of the ship's systems. Jake made a decision. "Lisa, take us closer, but keep us at maximum sensor range. I want to know what we're dealing with before we get too close." The Defiance changed course, her engines pushing them toward the unknown contacts. As they got closer, the readings became clearer and more frightening. The objects were huge, each one the size of a small moon. They moved through space like living things, pulsing with energy that made the ship's sensors scream warnings. "Captain," Lisa whispered, "you need to see this." Jake looked at the main screen and felt his blood turn to ice. The objects were ships, but unlike anything humans had ever built. They looked alive, with surfaces that rippled and flowed like skin. Strange lights pulsed along their hulls in patterns that hurt to look at. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "How many?" Jake asked. "I count 47 ships," Sam reported. "All of them bigger than anything in our fleet. And Captain, they're heading straight for human space." Amy suddenly straightened at her station. "Captain, I'm getting a transmission. It's coming from Earth Command." "Put it through," Jake ordered. Admiral Kate Hudson's voice filled the bridge, but it was full of static and fear. "All ships, all stations, this is Earth Command. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. Unknown hostile forces have entered the Sol system. They are not responding to any attempts at communication. New Tokyo is gone. Mars base is gone. We need all available ships to return immediately." The transmission cut off, leaving only static. Jake stared at the screen, trying to understand what he had just heard. New Tokyo was home to 50 million people. Mars base housed the largest military installation outside of Earth. How could they just be gone? "Amy, try to reestablish contact," he ordered, but his voice sounded strange in his own ears. "I'm trying, Captain, but the interference is getting worse." Amy's hand shook as she worked her controls. Tony stood up from his station, his face pale. "Captain, if those things destroyed New Tokyo and Mars base, then they're heading for Earth next." Jake nodded slowly. The alien ships they were watching were probably just part of a larger force. While they had been patrolling out here in the empty space between stars, humanity's greatest enemies had struck at the heart of their civilization. Set course for Earth, maximum speed, Jake ordered. Captain, at maximum speed, it will take us 6 days to reach Earth, Lisa said. If those ships are already there, ... She didn't need to finish the sentence. They all knew what she meant. 6 days might be too long. Earth might already be gone by the time they arrived. Over the next few hours, they tried desperately to contact anyone in human space. Amy worked constantly at her station, trying to punch through the interference that seemed to be getting stronger. Occasionally, they would catch fragments of transmissions, pieces of desperate voices calling for help or reporting the destruction of entire worlds. Fleet Base Titan is under attack, came one broken message. They're everywhere. We can't stop them. The shields are failing. We need immediate assistance. Then silence. This is Colony Ship Venture requesting emergency evacuation. Our defense platforms are destroyed. The enemy is landing troops. Please, someone help us. Then silence. Earth Defense Command to all ships. The enemy has broken through the orbital defenses. They're landing on the surface. This may be our last transmission. Tell our families we fought to the end. Then silence. Jake sat in his captain's chair and watched his crew work. Lisa kept the ship on course for Earth, even though they all knew they might be flying toward their own destruction. Tony monitored the engines, pushing them harder than they were designed to go. Sam ran diagnostics on their weapons, though they all knew that their small ship could not fight the monsters they had seen. Amy never stopped trying to contact other ships, other stations, anyone who might still be alive. On the third day, they found the wreckage. It had been the battleship USS Washington, one of the most powerful ships in the human fleet. Now it was scattered across 1,000,000 kilometers of space, twisted metal and frozen bodies drifting in the darkness. Jake ordered the ship to slow down so they could search for survivors, but they found none. Look at this damage, Sam said, studying the readings, whatever hit them. It wasn't conventional weapons. The metal is twisted in ways that don't make sense. It's like the ship was torn apart by something that could change the laws of physics. Jake nodded grimly. They were not dealing with an enemy that played by the same rules as humanity. These aliens, whoever they were, had technology that was far beyond human understanding. On the 4th day, they encountered another ship. The USS Ranger was still intact, but she was drifting powerless through space. Jake ordered his crew to dock with her so they could search for survivors. They found Captain Ben Rogers in his ready room, still alive but badly injured. He told them what had happened. They came out of nowhere, he said, his voice weak. Shit, like nothing we'd ever seen. They didn't try to communicate. They just started destroying everything. Our weapons couldn't even scratch their holes. They took out the entire Third Fleet in less than an hour. What do they want? Jake asked. Ben Rogers looked at him with hollow eyes. I don't think they want anything from us. I think they just want us gone. Jake felt something cold settle in his chest. This was not a war for territory or resources. This was extermination. They took Ben Rogers aboard the Defiance and continued toward Earth. But Jake already knew what they would find there. The transmissions had stopped completely 2 days ago. The interference was so strong now that their sensors could barely function. Ahead of them lay the Sol System, humanity's birthplace, and probably its grave. Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. They were good people, loyal and brave. They deserved better than to die in a hopeless fight against an enemy they could not understand or defeat. But they were all that was left now, and someone had to witness what had happened to their species. Someone had to remember that humanity had existed, even if there was no one left to tell. The Sol System was a graveyard. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiant and stared at what remained of humanity's home. Earth hung in space like a broken toy, its surface covered in strange lights that pulsed with alien energy. The moon was gone, completely gone, leaving only a field of debris that sparkled in the sunlight. Captain, Lisa whispered from her station, I'm reading movement around Earth. Lots of movement. The main screen showed dozens of the alien ships orbiting humanity's world. They moved in slow, graceful patterns, like sharks circling wounded prey. Some of them were attached to the planet's surface by long snake-like tubes that pulsed. With flowing energy, they're feeding, Ben Rogers said from behind Jake. The injured captain from the Ranger had recovered enough to stand, though he still moved slowly. That's what they do. They drain worlds dry and move on to the next one. Amy turned from her communication station, her face pale. Captain, I'm picking up some kind of broadcast. It's not human. Let's hear it, Jake said. The bridge filled with a sound that made everyone's skin crawl. It was like music, but wrong somehow, with notes that seemed to twist in directions that should not exist. Then a voice spoke, clear and cold and completely without emotion. Species designation. Human status incompatible. Conversion process initiated. Resistance is unnecessary. Compliance will reduce suffering. The message repeated itself 3 times, then stopped. Conversion process. Tony muttered from his engineering. Station, what does that mean? Sam Carter looked up from her tactical display, her face grim. I think I know. Captain, I'm detecting human biosignatures on some of those ships. Thousands of them. Jake felt sick. They're taking prisoners. No, Sam said quietly. The readings are all wrong. The humans are still alive, but they're connected to the ship system somehow. I think they're being used as components. The bridge fell silent except for the soft beeping of the ship's instruments. Jake tried to process what he was hearing. The aliens were not just killing humans. They were turning them into parts of their ships, keeping them alive but trapped forever. We have to get out of here, Lisa said, her voice shaking. We have to run where? Tony asked. There's nowhere left to go. They've taken everything. Jake was about to give the order to retreat when Amy suddenly straightened at her station. Captain, I'm getting a signal. It's weak, but it's definitely human. Put it through, Jake ordered. A man's voice crackled through the static. This is Civilian Transport Sanctuary calling any human ships. We have refugees aboard. 300 souls looking for safe passage. Please respond if anyone is out there. Jake grabbed the communications microphone. Sanctuary, this is Captain Morrison of the UFS Defiant. What's your location? Thank God, came the reply. We're hiding in the asteroid belt near Jupiter. Our engines are damaged and we're running out of supplies. Can you help us? Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. The Defiance was a small ship with limited space and supplies. Taking on 300 refugees would stretch them to the breaking point, but they could not leave these people to die. We're on our way, Jake said into the microphone. It took them 12 hours to reach the asteroid belt. The Sanctuary was an old cargo hauler that had been converted to carry passengers. She was badly damaged, with hull breaches sealed by emergency, patches and engines that barely worked. Captain Helen Price met them at the airlocks. She was a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and hands that shook from exhaustion. Thank you for coming, she said. We didn't think anyone was left. Where did you come from? Jake asked as they walked through the ship's corridors. Haven Point Colony, Helen replied. We were one of the last ships to get away before they destroyed everything. Most of our people didn't make it. The refugee areas of the ship were crowded, with families huddled together in small groups. Children cried softly while their parents tried to comfort them. Everyone looked scared and lost, like people who had seen their entire world disappear. Jake noticed 2 people who stood apart from the others. One was a woman in a torn lab coat who kept checking and rechecking a small data pad. The other was a man who carried himself like a soldier, even though he wore civilian clothes. That's Dr. Rachel Porter, Helen said, following Jake's gaze. She's a scientist from the research station on Haven Point, and the man next to her is Bill Hughes. He used to be military before he retired to the colony. Jake walked over to them. Dr. Porter looked up as he approached, and he saw intelligence and determination in her eyes, along with the same haunted look that everyone wore now. Dr. Porter, I'm Captain Morrison. I understand you're a scientist. She nodded. Quantum physics and weapons research. I was working on some experimental projects when the attack began. She held up her data pad. I managed to save some of my research data when we evacuated. What kind of weapons research? Jake asked. Rachel glanced around to make sure no one else was listening, then spoke quietly. Quantum disruption technology. The theory is that you can destabilize matter at the subatomic level, causing it to fall apart. We never finished the project because the power requirements were enormous. Jake felt a spark of hope for the first time in days. Could it work against those alien ships? Maybe, Rachel said. Their ships seem to be partly biological and partly technological. If the quantum field that holds the two parts together could be disrupted, double quotes, she shrugged. It's possible. Bill Hughes stepped forward. Captain, I've been studying the tactical recordings from the battles. The aliens have one weakness. They're overconfident. They don't think humans can hurt them, so they don't bother with strong defenses. That won't help us much, Jake said. Our weapons can't even scratch their holes. No, but if we had the right weapon, we might be able to get close enough to use it, Bill replied. They let damaged human ships drift in space without bothering to destroy them. They think we're no threat. Jake was about to respond when Amy's voice came over the ship's intercom. Captain Morrison to the bridge immediately. We have incoming contacts. Jake ran back to the Defiance with his heart pounding. On the bridge, Sam was bent over her tactical station with a grim expression. 3 alien ships, Captain. They're coming this way, but they're moving slowly. I think they're scanning the asteroids. They must have detected our signals when we contacted the sanctuary, Lisa said. Jake made a quick decision. All ships, prepare to move. We're getting out of here now. But it was too late. The alien ships had found him. They emerged from behind a large asteroid like hunting cats, their biomechanical hulls pulsing with energy. Captain, they're powering weapons, Sam reported. Evasive maneuvers, Jake ordered. Get us into the asteroid field. The Defiance and the Sanctuary raced between the spinning rocks, trying to use them as cover. The alien ships followed, moving with impossible grace through spaces that should have been too narrow for vessels their size. Green energy beams lanced out from the alien weapons, turning asteroids into clouds of dust and vapor. One beam passed, so close to the Defiance that it scorched the hull plating. Captain, the Sanctuary can't keep up, Lisa reported. Her engines are failing. Jake watched on his screen as the refugee ship fell behind, her damaged engines finally giving out. The alien ships closed in like wolves surrounding wounded prey. Sanctuary, this is Defiance. Abandon ship immediately. We'll pick up your escape pods. Negative, Defiance, came Helen Price's voice over the radio. Our pod systems are damaged. We can't evacuate. Jake stared at the screen in horror. 300 innocent people were about to die, and there was nothing he could do to save them. The Defiance's weapons were useless against the alien ships. Then Tony's voice came over the intercom from engineering. Captain, I can overload our main reactor. If we ram one of their ships, the explosion might damage them. That would destroy us too, Jake said. Better to die fighting than to run away and leave these people, Tony replied. Jake looked around. His bridge and his crew, they were all watching him, waiting for his decision. He thought about the 300 refugees on the Sanctuary, about the billions of humans who had already died, about the children he had seen crying in the ships. Cord up all power to engines, he ordered. We're going in. The Defiance turned and accelerated toward the nearest alien ship. On the screen, Jake could see the strange patterns of lights flowing across its hull. It was beautiful and terrible, like a living work of art that had been created to destroy everything he loved. The alien ship seemed to notice their approach. It turned slightly, bringing its weapons to bear on the small human vessel. 30 seconds to impact, Lisa reported. 20 seconds, 10 seconds, 10 seconds. At the last moment, the alien ship moved aside with casual ease, letting the Defiance race past. Harmlessly, a voice filled the bridge, the same cold, emotionless voice they had heard before. Resistance noted. Species shows potential for integration. Capture protocol initiated. Suddenly, the Defiance shuddered as some kind of energy field surrounded it. The ship's systems began to shut down one by one. Through the viewport, Jake could see the same thing happening to the Sanctuary. They're not going to destroy us, he realized. They're taking us alive. Long snake-like tubes extended from the alien ships, reaching out toward the helpless human vessels. The Defiance drifted in the shadow of a dead asteroid, running silent with all non-essential systems shut down. Jake Morrison sat in his captain's chair, staring at the tactical display that showed dozens of alien ships searching the asteroid. Belt for them, it had been 3 days since their escape from the alien hunters. 3 days of hiding, running, and watching their pursuers grow more desperate in their search. The aliens wanted them back, and Jake knew it was because of what had happened to their ship. "Captain," Dr. Rachel Porter said as she entered the bridge. She carried her data pad and looked like she had not slept in days. "I think I know what destroyed that alien ship." Jake turned to face her. "What did you find?" Rachel activated her datapad and showed him a series of complex diagrams. "I've been analyzing the sensor data from the battle. The alien ship didn't just fail randomly. Something caused a quantum cascade in their biomechanical systems. Could it have been a weapon malfunction?" Jake asked. "No." Rachel shook her head. "This was deliberate. Someone aboard the sanctuary triggered it somehow." She paused and looked around the bridge. "Captain, I need to speak with you privately." Jake led her to his ready room, a small space behind the bridge where he could talk without the crew overhearing. Rachel closed the door and spoke in a whisper. "Before we evacuated Haven Point, I wasn't just working on quantum disruption weapons. I was working on quantum resonance devices, small machines that could be hidden inside other equipment and activated remotely." Jake frowned. "What kind of equipment?" "Medical implants, prosthetic limbs, neural interfaces, anything that connects directly to the human nervous system." Rachel's voice was barely audible. "One of the refugees from the sanctuary has a medical implant that I modified with a quantum resonance device." "You mean you turned a person into a weapon?" Rachel nodded reluctantly. "Dr. Kevin Nash. He has a neural implant to control his artificial arm. When the aliens tried to connect him to their ship systems, the resonance device activated and caused the cascade failure." Jake sat back in his chair, trying to understand what she was telling him. "So when they tried to convert him, he destroyed their ship instead." "Exactly. But Captain Kevin doesn't know what I did to his implant. He thinks he just got lucky, and the device only works once. After it activates, it burns out completely." Jake thought about this information. It was horrible to think that Rachel had used an innocent man as a weapon without his knowledge, but it had also saved all their lives. "How many more of these devices do you have?" he asked. "None," Rachel said. "I only had time to modify one implant before we evacuated." "But, Captain, I can make more." "The problem is that I need the right equipment and materials, and I need access to the research data that's still locked in the military computers on Kepler Prime." Jake knew about Kepler Prime. It had been one of the most important military research worlds, home to advanced weapons programs and technology. The aliens had attacked it early in the invasion, but they might not have completely destroyed the underground facilities. "Kepler Prime is crawling with alien patrols," Jake said. "It would be suicide to go there." "Maybe," Rachel agreed. "But Captain, the data on Kepler Prime includes everything we need to build a real quantum disruption weapon. Not just a one-use device hidden in a medical implant, but a weapon that could destroy entire alien fleets." Jake was quiet for a long moment, thinking about their options. They could continue running and hiding, but eventually the aliens would find them. Or they could take an enormous risk and try to recover the research data that might give humanity a fighting chance. "I need to discuss this with the crew," he said. Finally, an hour later, Jake called a meeting in the ship's main conference room. His senior officers gathered around the table while Dr. Porter explained her plan. Bill Hughes listened carefully, occasionally asking technical questions about the alien defenses on Kepler Prime. "It's a death trap," Sam Carter said when Rachel finished speaking. "The planet's surface is covered with automated defense systems. Nothing bigger than a mouse could survive down there." "The surface?" "Yes," Bill Hughes agreed. "But the main research facility was built 3 kilometers underground. If the aliens didn't bother to completely destroy it, the data might still be there." Tony Blake scratched his gray head thoughtfully. "Even if we could get to the surface, how would we get into an underground bunker? The access tunnels were sealed with blast doors that can only be opened from the inside. The emergency maintenance shafts, Lisa Brooks said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. I helped design the navigation systems for Kepler Prime. There are emergency maintenance shafts that run from the surface to the lower levels. They're too small for normal use, but a person could crawl through them. Jake looked around the table at his officers. This is insane. We're talking about sneaking onto a heavily defended planet, crawling through maintenance shafts, and breaking into a military facility. The chances of success are almost zero. What are the chances of success if we do nothing? Amy Walsh asked quietly. The aliens are still hunting us. Our supplies won't last forever. Eventually, they'll find us and we'll all end up as components. In their ships, Jake knew she was right. They could not run forever. But he hated the idea of leading his people into an obvious trap. There's something else, Rachel said. The research facility on Kepler Prime has an AI system called Marcus. If it's still active, it will have complete records of every alien attack, every battle, every piece of information we've gathered about their technology. That data could be just as valuable as the weapon research. Bill Hughes nodded. An AI that's been studying the aliens for weeks might have found weaknesses that we've missed. Jake made his decision. We'll do it, but this is voluntary. Anyone who wants to stay with the ship can do so. I'm not ordering anyone to come on this mission. To his surprise, everyone volunteered. Even Ben Rogers, who was still recovering from his injuries, insisted on joining the mission. You'll need all the help you can get, he said, and I've got nothing left to lose anyway. 2 days later, the Defiance approached Kepler Prime. The planet looked like a ball of black glass. Its surface fused into a smooth, reflective shell by alien weapons. Strange lights moved across the surface in slow, hypnotic patterns. I'm reading 12 alien patrol ships in orbit, Sam reported. They're spread out in a standard search pattern. Any sign of ground defenses? Jake asked. Plenty. The surface is covered with automated turrets and sensor arrays, but they're all facing outward, designed to stop ships from landing. If we could get past the orbital patrols, we might be able to reach the surface. Jake studied the tactical display. The alien patrol ships moved in predictable patterns, leaving small gaps in their coverage. If they timed it right, they might be able to slip through there, Lisa said, pointing to a spot on the display. We have a window in 18 minutes. If we approach from the night side of the planet, we can reach the surface without being detected. The next 18 minutes felt like hours. Jake watched the alien ships move through their patrol routes while the Defiance drifted closer to the planet. When the moment came, Lisa fired the engines and sent them racing toward the surface. They made it past the orbital patrols. But the surface defenses were another matter. Automated turrets tracked their descent, firing streams of energy that lit up the night sky. Lisa flew the ship through the defensive fire with skill that bordered on miraculous, dodging and weaving between the energy beams. There's the landing. Sight, she called out, pointing to a small crater near the coordinates Rachel had provided. 30 seconds to touchdown. The ship shuddered as a near miss from one of the turrets scorched the hull. Alarms blared as systems overloaded and failed, but Lisa kept them on course, bringing the Defiance down in a rough landing that threw everyone against their restraints. Everyone alive? Jake asked as the ship settled onto the planet's surface. His crew reported in one by one. They had some injuries and significant damage to the ship, but everyone was alive. Around them, the automated turrets continued to fire, but they were designed to target flying objects and could not depress low enough to hit the landed. Jake looked out the viewport at the alien landscape. The ground was smooth black glass that reflected the strange lights in the sky. In the distance, he could see the twisted remains of what had once been cities, now reduced to abstract sculptures of melted metal and stone. The maintenance shaft entrance should be about 2 kilometers north of here, Rachel said. Checking her instruments, Jake suited up in environmental gear, along with Rachel, Tony, and Bill Hughes. The others would stay with the ship, ready to take off the moment the landing party returned. The surface of Kepler Prime was like walking on the surface of hell. The fused glass ground was still warm from the alien weapons that had melted it weeks ago. Strange radiation made their instruments flicker and buzz. In the distance, alien patrol drones moved through the air like metal insects, searching for signs of life. They found the maintenance shaft entrance hidden beneath a pile of twisted debris. It was a round hole, barely wide enough for a person to fit through, leading down into darkness. "I'll go first," Tony said, checking his flashlight. "If there's any unstable structure down there, I'll be able to spot it." The sound of cutting tools echoed through the underground facility as alien forces worked to break through the blast doors. Jake Morrison crouched behind a control console in the reactor chamber, holding the portable storage device that contained humanity's last hope. The data transfer had finished just as the aliens reached the outer defenses. Marcus had managed to compress years of quantum weapon research into a device the size of Jake's hand. But getting it off the planet alive would be another matter entirely. "Captain, they've breached the outer perimeter," Bill Hughes reported from his position near the chamber entrance. "I count at least 20 of them moving through the corridors." Jake spoke into his radio, trying to reach the Defiance on the surface. "Amy, do you copy?" Static filled the air for several seconds before Amy's voice came through, distorted and weak. "Captain, we're under attack up here. 3 alien ships are firing on our position. Lisa's trying to keep us mobile, but our engines are damaged." "Can you take off?" Jake asked. "Not yet. Tony's replacement is working on the engine repairs, but he needs more time." Jake looked at the storage device in his hands. All of Marcus's research data was contained in this small piece of technology. The weapon specifications, the alien analysis data, everything humanity needed to fight back. But none of it would matter if they could not get it off this planet. "Marcus," Jake called out to the AI system, "how long until you can overload the reactor?" "I can initiate the overload sequence at any time, Captain Morrison. However, once started, the process cannot be stopped. The explosion will occur in exact 10 minutes. Tony Blake looked up from where he was examining the reactor controls. "Captain, if Marcus overloads this reactor, the explosion will reach the surface. It might damage the alien ships up there, but it will also destroy the Defiance," Rachel Porter said quietly. Jake weighed their options. They could trigger the reactor overload and hope it damaged the alien ships enough for the Defiance to escape. But the explosion would kill everyone in the underground facility, including his team. Or they could try to fight their way out and risk the aliens capturing the weapon data. The decision was made for him when the blast doors at the chamber entrance began to glow red hot. The aliens were cutting through the final barrier. "Marcus, begin the overload sequence." Jake ordered. "Overload sequence initiated. Time to detonation, 10 minutes. Jake spoke into his radio. "Defiance, this is Morrison. We're triggering a reactor. Overload. You have 10 minutes to get clear of the blast zone." "Captain, what about you?" Amy's voice was filled with static and fear. "We'll find another way out," Jake lied. "Just get that ship ready to fly." The blast doors exploded inward in a shower of molten metal. Alien soldiers poured through the opening, their biomechanical suits gleaming in the emergency lighting. They moved with inhuman speed and precision, their weapons charging with deadly energy. Jake and his team opened fire with their The human weapons barely scratched the alien armor, but they managed to slow the enemy advance. Bill Hughes threw a grenade that caught 3 aliens in the explosion, sending them crashing into the reactor machinery. "Captain, we can't hold them off much longer," Rachel shouted over the sound of gunfire. Jake looked around the chamber desperately. There had to be another way out, some escape route they had missed. Then he saw it, a maintenance ladder that led up to a service tunnel near the ceiling. "The service tunnel," he called to his team. Everyone moved toward the ladder. They fought their way across the chamber, using the reactor machinery as cover. Tony reached the ladder first and began climbing, but an alien energy beam caught him in the shoulder and sent him tumbling to the floor. "I'm hit," Tony gasped, clutching his wounded arm. Jake helped him to his feet, while Rachel and Bill continued firing at the advancing aliens. "Can you climb?" "I'll try," Tony said through gritted teeth. One by one, they made it up the ladder and into the service tunnel. The tunnel was narrow and dark, barely wide enough for them to crawl through. Behind them, they could hear the aliens, following their metallic claws scraping against the metal walls. "Marcus, How much time left? Jake called out. 7 minutes to detonation. Captain Morrison. They crawled through the tunnel as fast as they could, following the maintenance maps that Rachel had memorized. The tunnel led upward through the facility's structure, eventually reaching a service hatch that opened onto the planet's surface. When they emerged from the hatch, they found themselves in the middle of a battle. The Defiance was hovering 20 meters above the ground, her engines smoking and sparking. 2 alien ships circled around her like predators, firing energy beams that lit up the night sky. There, Bill pointed to a rocky outcrop about 50 meters away. If we can reach those rocks, we might be able to signal the ship. They ran across the glassy surface of the planet, dodging energy beams from the alien ships overhead. Behind them, more aliens emerged from the facility, pursuing them across the barren landscape. Jake's radio crackled with Amy's voice. Captain, where are you? We can't see you down there. We're at the rocky outcrop northwest of the facility. Jake replied, breathing hard as they took cover behind the stones. We see you, Lisa's voice came over the radio. Hang on, we're coming to get you. The Defiance swooped down toward their position, but one of the alien ships moved to intercept. Energy beams crossed in the air above their heads as the 2 vessels engaged in a deadly dance. Marcus, time remaining? Jake asked. 4 minutes to detonation. Captain Morrison. Jake realized they were not going to make it. The alien ships would not let the Defiance land, and there was no other way off the planet, but the weapon data had to survive. Humanity's future depended on it. He made a decision that tore at his heart. Jake grabbed his radio and switched to a private channel that only Amy could hear. Amy, listen carefully. I'm going to throw the data storage device toward the ship. You need to catch it and get out of here immediately. Captain, what are you talking about? The reactor explosion will happen in 3 minutes. You need to leave now. We're not leaving without you, Amy said firmly. That's an order, Jake replied. Humanity needs this data more than it needs us. Before Amy could argue further, Jake stood up from behind the rocks and hurled the storage device toward the Defiance with all his strength. The small device arced through the air, glinting in the light from the alien weapons fire. Sam Carter leaned out of the ship's open cargo bay and caught the device just as an alien energy beam passed inches from her head. Got it, she called out. Now go, Jake shouted into his radio. Get out of here! The Defiance began to climb away from the surface, pursued by the 2 alien ships. Jake watched them disappear into the night sky and felt a mixture of pride and sadness. His crew would survive, and they would carry the weapon data to other human survivors. 2 minutes to detonation, Marcus announced. Jake looked at his companions. Tony was leaning against a rock, his wounded arm hanging at his side. Rachel sat nearby, staring up at the sky where the Defiance had vanished. Bill Hughes checked his weapon and prepared for the final alien assault. Well, Jake said, at least we gave them a chance. The aliens reached their position and surrounded the rocky outcrop. There were dozens of them now, their biomechanical forms gleaming in the strange light that pulsed across the planet's surface. They did not attack immediately, instead forming a circle around the humans. One of the aliens stepped forward. It was larger than the others, with more elaborate markings on its armor. When it spoke, its voice carried the same cold emotionlessness that Jake had heard in their broadcasts. Human specimens will be preserved for integration. Resistance is futile. Compliance will reduce suffering. Go to hell, Bill Hughes said, raising his weapon. The alien leader gestured. An energy field surrounded each of the humans, paralyzing them where they stood. Jake struggled against the field, but it was like being trapped in solid stone. Integration process will begin immediately, the alien said. Species knowledge will be absorbed. Individual consciousness will be terminated. Tubes extended from the alien soldiers, reaching toward the trapped humans. Jake watched in horror as the tubes moved closer, knowing that in seconds they would be connected to the alien collective and their minds would be stripped away. 1 minute to detonation, Marcus announced. The alien leader paused, its head tilting as it processed this information. Explain the nature of this detonation. Jake smiled grimly. You're about to find out. The alien spoke rapidly in its own language, and suddenly all the soldiers were moving away from the rocky outcrop. But they were too late. 30 seconds to detonation. The energy fields holding the humans flickered and failed as the aliens focused on escape. Jake felt sensation return to his limbs just as the ground began to shake beneath their feet. 20 seconds. 10 seconds. Jake looked up at the night sky one last time, hoping that somewhere out there, the Defiance was safely away from the blast zone. The weapon data would reach other human survivors. Dr. Porter's research would be used to build the quantum disruption weapon. And maybe, just maybe, humanity would find a way to fight back. 5 seconds. Jake closed his eyes and thought about Earth, about all the people who had died in the alien invasion, about the crew of the Defiance who would carry on the fight. 6 weeks had passed since the explosion on Kepler Prime. The Defiance drifted in the shadow of Earth's moon, her hull scarred from countless battles and her crew exhausted from weeks of running and hiding. But today was different. Today they would make their final stand. Amy Walsh had taken command of the ship after Captain Morrison's death. It was not something she had wanted, but the crew had chosen her, and she would not let them down. She stood on the bridge, looking at the tactical display that showed the massive alien fleet orbiting Earth. The enemy had grown stronger since the invasion began. More ships arrived every day, drawn from across the galaxy to participate in the harvest of humanity. Amy counted over 200 vessels, each one the size of a city and armed with weapons that could destroy planets. The quantum disruptor is ready. Captain Dr. Kevin Nash reported from the engineering station. Over the past weeks, he had worked with the other refugees to build the weapon from Dr. Porter's research data. It was not pretty to look at, just a collection of modified components welded to the ship's main reactor, but it would work. How much time do we need for the weapon to charge? Amy asked. 90 seconds, Kevin replied. But Captain, once we start the charging sequence, we can't stop it. The reactor will overload and the ship will be destroyed. Amy nodded. She had known this from the beginning. The quantum disruptor required enormous amounts of power, more than any ship could safely generate. The Defiance would have to sacrifice herself to fire the weapon. Lisa Brooks looked up from her navigation station. Captain, I've calculated our approach vector. If we use the moon's gravity to slingshot toward the enemy fleet, we can reach the center of their formation before they can stop us. What about their defenses? Sam Carter asked from her weapons station. They'll try to destroy us before we get close enough, Lisa admitted. We'll have to fight our way through their entire fleet. Amy looked around the bridge at her crew. They were tired and scared, but they were ready to fight. In the weeks since Morrison's death, they had become more than just crew members. They had become family. All hands, this is Captain Walsh, Amy announced over the ship's intercom. Today we end this. Today we make the aliens pay for what they've done to our people. We may not survive this battle, but our sacrifice will give humanity a chance to fight back. The refugee areas of the ship were packed with people who had lost everything to the alien invasion. Families huddled together, holding each other as the ship prepared for its final mission. Many of them had volunteered to help with the battle, taking positions at damage control stations and auxiliary systems. Bill Hughes had survived the explosion on Kepler Prime by pure luck. Thrown clear of the blast zone when the reactor detonated, he now served as the ship's military advisor, training the refugees in basic combat skills. Remember, he told a group of volunteers, our job is to keep this ship flying long enough to reach the enemy fleet. Every second we buy brings us closer to our target. Dr. Helen Price, the captain of the refugee ship Sanctuary, worked in the medical bay, preparing for the casualties that would surely come. She had lost her own ship to the aliens, but she had found a new purpose aboard the Defiance. Long until we reached the fleet? Amy asked Lisa. 12 minutes at current speed, Lisa replied. The aliens have detected us. They're moving to intercept. On the main screen, Amy could see the alien ships turning toward them like a swarm of angry insects. Their biomechanical hulls pulsed with energy as they prepared for battle. All weapons prepare to fire? Sam ordered. The Defiance was not a warship. Her weapons were designed for dealing with pirates and smugglers, not for fighting an entire alien fleet. But Sam had spent weeks modifying every system on the ship, turning civilian equipment into improvised weapons. The first alien ships reached them as they passed the moon's orbit. Energy beams lanced out from the enemy vessels, striking the shields and causing systems to overload throughout the ship. "Shields down to 60%, reported one of the refugees working at a damage control station. "Return fire," Amy ordered. The Defiance's weapons blazed to life, striking the nearest alien ship with everything they had. Their modified particle beams carved deep gouges in the enemy's hull, but the ship kept coming. "We're barely scratching them," Sam called out. "It doesn't matter," Amy replied. "We just need to get close enough to use the disruptor." More alien ships joined the attack, surrounding the Defiance with a wall of energy fire. The human ship shook and bucked as beam after beam struck her hull. Emergency lights flickered as power systems failed. "Hull breach on deck 4, Helen Price reported from the medical bay. "We're sealing it now. Engine power down to 80%. Kevin called from engineering. Amy gripped her command chair as the ship lurched under another barrage. Through the smoke and sparks on the bridge, she could see the alien fleet growing larger on the main screen. They were getting closer, but not fast enough. "Lisa, can you give us more speed?" "I'm trying, Captain, but the engines are already at maximum." An alien ship moved directly in front of them, blocking their path to the main fleet. Its weapons powered up, preparing to deliver a killing blow to the Defiance. "All power to forward. Shields," Amy ordered. The alien ship fired, sending a massive energy beam toward the Defiance. The ship's shields flared and held, but barely. Sparks erupted from control panels all over the bridge. "Shields failing," Sam reported. But then something unexpected happened. The alien ship that had fired on them suddenly shuddered and began to drift. Its lights flickered and went out as system failures cascaded through its hull. "What happened?" Amy asked. Kevin looked up from his engineering station with surprise. "Captain, I think the quantum field from our disruptor is affecting their ships. Even though we haven't fired it yet, the weapon is generating a low-level disruption field." Amy realized what this meant. They did not have to wait until they reached the center of the enemy fleet. They could start affecting alien ships right now. "Kevin, can you increase the field strength?" "I can try, but it will drain power from our engines and weapons." "Do it," Amy ordered. Kevin worked frantically at his controls, redirecting power from all non-essential systems to the quantum disruptor. The weapon began to glow with an eerie blue light, and the disruption field grew stronger. Around them, alien ships began to experience system failures. Some lost power completely and drifted helplessly through space. Others exploded as their biomechanical systems tore themselves apart. "It's working," Sam said with amazement. "They're falling apart." But the effect was not perfect. Many of the alien ships were too far away to be affected by the field, and they continued to fire on the Defiance. The human ship was taking terrible damage, but she kept moving toward her target. "Captain, we're losing life support on decks 2 and 3, Helen reported. "Evacuate those sections," Amy ordered. "Main engine offline," Kevin called out. "We're running on backup power only." Amy looked at the tactical display. They were close now, very close to the heart of the alien fleet. But the Defiance was dying. Around them, her systems failing one by one under the relentless enemy fire. "How long until we can fire the disruptor?" she asked. "We need to be closer," Kevin replied. "Another 2 minutes at least." Amy knew they did not have 2 minutes. The ship was coming apart, and they were still taking fire from dozens of alien vessels. They needed something to give them time. "Sam, target the largest enemy ship. Put everything we have leapt into one shot." Sam nodded and began charging the ship's remaining weapons. "All weapons ready, Captain?" "Fire!" The Defiance unleashed everything she had at the massive alien flagship. Particle beams, missiles, and improvised weapons all struck the enemy vessel at once. The alien ship's shields flared and failed, and the combined attack tore a massive hole in its hull, but the effort cost the Defiance dearly. Her weapon systems overloaded and exploded, sending shockwaves through the ship. The bridge filled with smoke as control panels caught fire. "Weapons offline," Sam reported, coughing from the smoke. "We're close enough," Kevin called out. "I can fire the disruptor now." Amy looked around the bridge at her crew. Lisa was still at her post, trying to keep the ship on course with manual controls. Sam worked to restore power to damaged systems. Kevin prepared to fire the weapon that would destroy them all. Kevin, begin the firing sequence. Amy ordered. Firing sequence initiated. Kevin announced. 90 seconds to weapon discharge. The quantum disruptor began to glow brighter, its blue light filling the ship with an otherworldly radiance. Around them, the disruption field grew stronger, affecting alien ships across the entire fleet. 80 seconds. More alien ships lost power and began to drift. Others exploded as their biomechanical bonds failed completely. But the remaining vessels concentrated their fire on the Defiance, determined to destroy the human ship before it could complete its mission. 70 seconds. A massive energy beam punched through the ship's weakened shields and tore through the hull. Emergency alarms screamed as atmosphere vented into space. Hull breach on the bridge, Lisa reported. Emergency force fields are holding, but not for long. 60 seconds. Amy activated the ship's intercom one last time. All hands, this is the captain. It has been an honor to serve with you. In 60 seconds, we will strike a blow for all of humanity.